Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Sunday Night Live show with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in Scotland, the capital of the universe and any other metaverse that there might be out there, including alternative realities. How are you all doing, folks? I hope you're doing very, very well, and I hope you've had a fantastic weekend so far. I have had a great weekend, nice and quiet and chilled out, which is kind of what I needed after a very busy week. But just to let you all know, folks, there is a possibility I may have to cut this show a little short. We are under a severe thunderstorm warning, so it's entirely possible that I may have to shut up shop before the hour is up. But we will see how far we get. Kind of depends. Right now, one thing I can tell you is it is incredibly hot in here. And I know from outside it feels very, very humid and very, very close. Because I was out in the garden just about an hour ago. Yeah, it definitely feels like there are storms brewing, and I've looked at the radar and they are heading this way. So hopefully we will get the whole hour in before it starts going off. So that's what I'm hoping for. They extended the expiration on the warning by an extra hour. It was supposed to be until 0200. They pushed it back until 0300. So this is probably likely to happen. So with that warning, there is the warning of large hailstones as well, but we're not under a tornado warning, which is good. So, but that said, in the UK, tornado warnings, very different to United States tornado warnings, in as much as when there is a warning of a tornado, it's because they see the rotation on the radar. It doesn't necessarily mean that a tornado will actually set down. So in the United States, when there is a tornado warning, there is a much higher probability that it will actually happen. Whereas here, it's kind of like, it may possibly happen. You never know. So it's a wee bit different here. But anyway, so we will try and get this show done and dusted before the action starts, hopefully. Because if there is thunder around, I pretty much need to shut everything down. So yeah. Let's go see who is here. And Billy Morgan was first in the door, followed by Chris Manrachna. He says, good, bright, sunny afternoon to you, Billy. Did you get to see the Northern Lights? I keep falling asleep and missing it. Yeah. We have been able to see the Northern Lights here in Scotland. On the first night of the display, it was awesome. Let's just say that. It's certainly something to remember for sure. But tonight, last night and tonight, no such joy because it's way too cloudy. You can't see anything. There's just nothing to see, sadly. But yeah, the Northern Lights have been spectacular, and in fact, crazily enough, because there is the enhanced activity of the Northern Lights is kind of also to do with the solar storms that have been taking place. The sky has been displaying some interesting colors, even as far away as Australia. I've got friends and family, in fact, in Perth, in Western Australia, and they've been able to see the sky kind of like having a pink kind of hue and color to it late at night. So, yeah, it's pretty spectacular. And who knows what the effects of the solar storms will be when all of that gets from the sun to Earth here. Who knows what that will do? It does tend to interfere with electronics and things like that. So, yeah. Let's see. Chris also says he's decided to take the leap of faith and buy a PreSonus interface. Good for you. It's a good leap, let me tell you that. It's not like, stepping out into the dark. It's actually a very, very good leap indeed. I'm considering the Quantum HD8. Yes, so am I. I don't have one. I was kind of hopeful that I might be able to get one on beta, but no, I didn't, unfortunately. The HD8, it's basically the new Quantums. They are like the other Quantums in the Quantum family, except these ones are USB. So they are ideally designed for the PC market, or computers that don't have a Thunderbolt circuit on them, a Thunderbolt card. So these are pretty cool. And let's just say, even though they are USB, so they're not going to be as fast as Thunderbolt on a Mac, they are pretty darn fast. A friend of mine has one. He got one of the first ones, and he's on a PC, and at I think 32 samples, he got a latency of basically 1.2 milliseconds, which is ludicrously fast on a PC. That's insanely fast on a USB bus. Ridiculous. And yes, all new mic pre's on these HD devices and on the ESs as well, the smaller units, completely redesigned. These are way better than the Xmax pre's that we've been using in our hardware interfaces for a long time. These are way better. They've also got guitar inputs designed by Fender, so that they are basically the same guitar input circuits as on the Toadmaster Pro. I have a Toadmaster Pro down there. So it's exactly the same circuit for the guitar inputs on the front of each of the units. So yeah, they're perfect for guitars and for basses from that point of view. They are really good. They are insanely good. Plus, they also have the ADAT outs as well, so you can expand via ADAT. And they've all got MIDI. Every single one has MIDI. What else can I say about them off the top of my head? I'm just basically going off the top of my head here. The converters are the best in class converters, basically. Especially in the HD8. You can go up to a ludicrously high sample rate. Basically, you can go up to 192, but you can go ludicrously fast as well at 192. And you've got like 75 dB plus 75 dB of gain. That's insane. That's ridiculous. So there's loads of really cool features. Plus, every single unit has loopback, which is great if you're streaming, or if you're making videos, or if you're wanting to do two separate mixes, for monitor mixing and for front of house mixing, for example. Loopback is great because you got two loopbacks, which the other devices, the other interfaces like the Studio 1824C, there's only one loopback. The Revelator interfaces, they have more than one, but the Studio 1824 and the other Studio C series interfaces, they only have one loopback circuit. But so these have two, so this is great. But yes, they have plenty of I/O. Plenty of I/O. And like I said, you via ADAT you can expand. So they are extremely good. I have to have some kind of loopback function on anything I buy. The Motu does this well. Well, you're listening to loopback on the 1824C just now. That's how I do this show. That's how you heard the theme tune music. That's how you're hearing everything that I do on my show. So anytime I'm doing anything in Studio One, including the theme tune music, all of that is done through loopback. So that's what you're hearing. So it works really well on the 1824C, and it's going to be just as good on the Quantum HD 8. However, because there is a separate, there's two loopback circuits, there's also a dedicated mixer as well. So you can set up a dedicated mixer for your inputs and your outputs for the loopback. So that's very, very cool. So you can balance every input and every output on the loopback inside of Universal Control, which is amazing. You can't do that on the, well, you can sort of on the 1824C, but it's not nearly as flexible as what you're going to get on the Quantum. Nowhere near. But it is exceedingly good, and the headphone outputs are amazing. They can actually go ludicrously loud. Not that you would ever need it to, because you need to look after your ears. So who else do we have here? We got Mike Johnson, and we got Ron Figura, we got Tony Cardona, and we got Boris Dancy, and we've got the W5 family, we got Cal Tradusiak, we have got Matt Cochran, we've got Dave Barcelo. Who else do we have here? I'm scrolling through to see if we got anybody who... we got Juan Ignacio Weissman. Hello, Juan. He says in Argentina they have a pink sky, which is awesome. Chris says, what about loopback? Yes, I've just talked about loopback. So yes, it does have loopback, and the loopback is way better than what I'm using just now. And what I'm using just now is freaking fantastic. So on the Quantums, even better. Let's go back up the chat. Now that I've talked about who's here, let's go and check out Studio One questions. I already started that part of the show, but yeah. So I've done things in a weird order. I'm sorry. Mike is here. He says, I'm in bed. Just wanted to say hello. Thank you, Mike. I'm glad you touched base and you said hello. I appreciate that. So let's see. Boris says, my sincerest thank you to you and the whole PreSonus development team for the latest update. It restored audio device controls, and I could not be happier. I love the software, and I plan to be a loyal subscriber for years to come. Studio One for life. Thank you so very much, Boris. I will pass that on to the Studio One team. They will be very happy to hear that. Yes, Studio One 6.6.1 is awesome. It's it's really just a maintenance update, but we did fix a few things that were broken in 6.6.0. And we made a couple of minor changes, but for the most part, it's just a maintenance update fixing stuff that was broken in the previous build. So yeah, 6.6.1 is very, very cool. And I'm very glad that you are enjoying it. For those of you that have maybe been a little bit unhappy about the fact that we had to close shop.presonus.com, I just want to basically remind everybody that you can now get loads of the Studio One add-ons, including Lead Architect, the instrument that was added to Studio One 6.6. You can now get all of those from retail sales partners. So that includes Sweetwater, Toman, Gear for Music, Scan, and all of those companies. So if you're in the United States, Sweetwater is going to be the place to go and get those. So you can get things like the CTC1, you can get the entire Retro Mix Legends collection, you can get Lead Architect, you can get loads of the Presence XT instrument sounds as well. So there's loads of stuff that was formerly in shop.presonus.com. You can now get those in our retail partners. So Sweetwater, Toman, and all the others. Yes, so there is a reason why shop.presonus.com has closed and has gone away. The reason is that coming in the future is going to be a much more organized sales, direct sales thing, which is going to be built into presonus.com. So what you previously had to do was you had to sign into shop.presonus.com with your credentials to buy software, right? So add-ons, Studio One upgrades, Notion, expansion sounds for Notion, all of that stuff, you signed into that. But you also signed into your my.presonus.com account as well. So that's like 2 things to sign into, right? But if you wanted to buy hardware, you did that through third-party channels, right? But of late, maybe the last year and a half, maybe, you've been able to buy hardware stuff direct, especially if you're in the United States. If you're in the United States, you can buy hardware direct from presonus.com. Okay? So it's like a third thing to sign into. And then we had this apparel store as well, which was actually really popular. And you could get Presonus t-shirts, Presonus shirts, hoodies, mugs, bags, stuff like that you could get from the apparel store. That was another thing that you had to sign into, right? So you had all of these different things you had to sign into. Well, the plan is to consolidate all of those into one place that you sign into once, and then you can just buy stuff, whether it's hardware, software, upgrades, expansion sounds, add-ons, whatever. You can buy all of that in one place, but it's going to take some time to build. So in the meantime, all of the add-ons for Studio One are in third-party retail, so Sweetwater and places like I've just mentioned. So I hope that that kind of clarifies all of that. It's not that we're pushing people away or making things exclusive to Studio One Plus, although actually the easiest way to get the Studio One add-ons is by a membership of Studio One Plus. And especially if you go hybrid, you get Studio One Plus for 12 months, which gives you Studio One Professional, and then at the end of that you get a perpetual license. And then if you decide, hey, I'm going to carry on for another year, guess what? At the end of that, you'll get another perpetual license. So it's useful, it's helpful, and it's a pretty darn good deal, in my opinion. But yeah, so I hope that that kind of helps clarify that aspect of the shop thing. Because you have no idea how many emails and how many Facebook messages I got and how many comments were. I had to kind of go through and remove some of them, but there were loads of comments on my 6.6 update video that I did. So many. So many comments. And not all of them necessarily very kind or very respectful or very loving. Some of them were actually, let's just say I had to report a certain individual who I'm not going to name to the federales for very, very hateful and hurtful comments that he made. All right, let's go and see what else we have in the chat here. Rich Creswell is here. Sorry, I can hear the rain. Wow, that rain is heavy. Yep, it's going to be fun in a little while, I think. All right, so if anyone else has any other Studio One questions, let's get them into the chat, and we can talk Studio One, which is what this show is all about. We got 20 people here, but we've only got 9 likes. It'd be nice if we got 20 likes as well as 20 people watching. So if you like what we're doing here, and Sunday Night Live is something that you are enjoying watching and you're enjoying the content, then please do hit the like button. It helps me, which helps you, because if it helps me, it means it's going to be a lot easier for me to continue making this, because this is like show number 332, so there's an awful lot of shows that I have done, and I would like to keep going. I would like to keep going to get up to show number 400. I'd like to keep going beyond show number 400 up into 500, and I would like to get up to 6,000 subscribers, and then I would like to get to 10,000 subscribers. Those are kind of my goals and objectives for this channel. So if you guys can help me get there, that would be awesome. And like I said, you know, as I've said before, you know, when we start hitting milestones, I'm going to start doing giveaways. And that kind of thing to celebrate hitting those milestones. So I need your help to get there. And, you know, when we hit those milestones, you can enter to win a giveaway, whatever that's going to be. I haven't decided yet, but so help me hit those targets, and then we can move forward. Kyle says I hear the rains down in Africa. Yeah, God bless those rains down in Africa, right? All right, anyone else got any questions? Otherwise, that's it. We're done. So yeah, if you've got any other questions about the Quantum HD interfaces, then we can talk more about those, or the ES interfaces. We can talk a little bit more about those. I don't know loads about them. I know enough to kind of give you at least some idea of what you're going to get and how useful they are. One thing I can tell you about both the ES and the HDs is they are all metal with glass. Okay, so the screens, those are all glass, right? And the chassis for each unit is metal. There's no plastic involved apart from the wee knob and the buttons, right? So the buttons, the knob, those are plastic, but the screen is glass and the chassis itself is metal. So these things are robust, they are strong, and they look awesome. So Just Bob says, who would benefit with the upgrade to the PreSonus Quantum ES? The Quantum ES, they are kind of the slightly lower budgets, sort of around $300-ish, $300 to $499, I think, units. I don't want to get any of my facts wrong here, so I am gonna open the website so we can take a look. Because, like I said, I don't want to give you guys wrong information. So let's go take a look at the Quantum ES, and we'll get the screen up for these. So this is them. So you've got the ES2 and the ES4. ES2 because it's 2 inputs, ES4 because it's 4, right? But like I said, these are constructed out of metal and these screens are glass. So they are pretty awesome. And I mean, look at the meters. I mean, the meters are really, really cool. And then you've got this big knob that controls pretty much everything. The best feature that appears on all of the Quantums, the Quantum ES and the Quantum HD, my opinion, the best is the auto game feature. It's amazing. What a brilliant idea. You press the auto gain button and the interface listens to you singing into your microphone or tapping your microphone or playing your guitar, whatever it might be, whatever the source is that you're recording, and it listens to it and it automatically adjusts the gain to the best level. So it listens over a period of about 10 to 15 seconds, and it makes it listens to that signal, and it takes an average of what is the best gain level to set the recording input at before you record. It's amazing. So if you've got a bunch of drum mics, you like on the HD8, for example, let's say you've got 8 mics over your drum set, and you set them all active, and you press the auto gain, you tell your drummer to start playing. Your drummer starts playing, all the mics get immediately auto gained in those 10 seconds. And then when it's done, you're ready to record because they're all auto gained. So they're all set to the correct level for recording. That's a pretty awesome, amazing feature as far as I'm concerned. I would love it if we had that on every interface, but we don't. But we have them on the ES and the HD. Any or all capable of loopback? All of them are capable of loopback. I will take you through some of the features in just a second. So here's the ES2, here's the ES4. $299.99 for the ES2, $329.99 for the ES4. So 2 max HD preamps. So that's basically the new next generation mic preamps. designed by PreSonus. 75 dB of preamp gain range. High performance converters, 113 dB dynamic range on the ES2 and the ES4. One headphone output on the ES2, two on the ES4. One instrument input for your guitar on the ES2. On the ES4 you got two, and you got auto gain. You get 6 months of Studio One Plus membership. You get universal control, and look at this, loopback audio. Right, so you get loopback on both interfaces, and you get loopback on both Quantum HDs as well. USB-C bus powered, so no need for a power supply. 2 line outputs on the 2 and 4 on the ES4, and the ES4 has speaker switching, so you can switch between 2 speakers with one press of a button. So that's the ES interfaces. They are tabletop interfaces. They're not rack mounts, but they're pretty darn cool. I like these. And like I said, you get 6 months membership of Studio One Plus, which is great. But you don't get the perpetual license, okay? You do not get the perpetual license. You only get the perpetual license if you have 12 months. So it's possible that at the end of the 6 months, you might want to add another 6 months on. You can do that. And as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure of this. I will need to check this to be sure. But I'm fairly confident that if you add another 6 months, then you will get the perpetual license at the end of that. If you add another 6 months onto the 6 months that you get for free. Quantum HDs, let's take a quick look at those. So these are, well, the 8 is rack mounted, and the HD is not. The HD2 is not. So this one's got 2 inputs. This one's got 8. And as you can see, these look pretty cool. So you got multifunction LED encoder, guitar and bass inputs that feature the ToneMaster Pro input circuits, and you got the auto gain button, and then you've got USB-C, you've got ADAT, and you've got MIDI over SPDIF. And you get Studio One, Universal Control, and the My PreSonus app as well. You also get Studio One Pro Perpetual License and 12 months of Studio One Plus included with the Quantum HDs. So that's both of them. And scrolling down, so the HD2 is $500. The HD8 is $1,000 pretty much. And in the United States, you can buy these direct in the EMEA area, so that's Europe and UK and Australia and Asia and that area. It's not direct from PreSonus.com. You would have to get these from Thomann or Gear for Music or somewhere like that. HD2 has 2 max HD preamps. Quantum HD8 has 8. 124 dB dynamic range. You get the Studio One Plus hybrid membership. You get universal control. 2 instrument inputs on both. 1 headphone output on that one. And 2 on the 8. 4 line outputs on the HD2. 10 on the HD8. Both have speaker switching. Both have reamp outputs. So if you want to do reamping after you've recorded a dry signal and you want to reamp, you can do that. Both have loopback, and I believe both have 2 loopback circuits. So there you go. And they both have ADAT up to 48K, and the HD8 can be used in standalone mode, so you don't even need to use a computer. So you can add 8 pre's and 10 outs to your existing audio interface, connect up to 2 additional Quantum HD8s through ADAT for a total of 24 mic pre's at sample rates up to 48K. So these are pretty cool. So 16 channels of ADAT optical input plus stereo SPDIF I/O on both of these units. So these are pretty awesome. And the deal that you get with Studio One Plus membership for either 6 months or 12 months is pretty awesome as well. And like I said, the HD interfaces, you're going to get the perpetual license as well. at the end. Because basically that's a subscription to Studio One Hybrid, whereas with the ES units, those are subscriptions to the monthly plan. Okay? So, there you go. Let's see. I'm looking at your questions here. So to answer Bob's questions, who would benefit? I think everybody would benefit. Everybody would benefit from these interfaces. They are USB, but they can be used on a Mac or a PC. Now, granted, a lot of Macs have a Thunderbolt card built in, right? But you could use these interfaces just using the USB buses rather than the Thunderbolt. And they are still insanely, ludicrously fast for USB interfaces. These are probably the fastest USB interfaces on the market right now, I would argue. We're kind of still, these are in public release, these are out, these are shipping. You can pre-order these, and as soon as they're shipped into your country, you can get these, right? But we're still kind of like looking at the latencies of these and just going, wow, these are exceptional for latency. Let's see. Juan says, can you explain how to, in a vocal recording, push a button and cut the dead no sound parts to later put a fade in and out on the parts? I think I know what you're talking about. I'm going to go back over here. I think I know what you're talking about here. And you're talking probably about something called strip silence. Now, strip silence is a really cool feature in Studio One. And there is a way to do it with just one button. But I wouldn't recommend you do that. I would recommend that you actually use your mouse with one hand to select the range where there's no sound and hit the delete button. And just do that through the whole range of your tracks. Where there's dead sound, just go through range select where you see nothing going on the audio event, and just hit the delete button on your computer keyboard, and poof, they're gone. That's what I do. It's not as simple as hitting one button, but as far as I'm concerned, it's much more reliable, because if you have everything just orientated around a single button, there is the margin for error, because essentially the strip silence function is going to work on thresholds. If sound is lower than this threshold, then delete the event. And that kind of thing. So I don't like that, because there is the possibility that subtleties like ghosted notes on snare drums, dead notes on a bass, for example, could get deleted by a strip silence function that's one button. So you could end up missing really, really important subtleties by them being effectively just deleted by one button. So it's not necessarily something that I think is a good thing, to have like one button that just eradicates silence from all your events and then crossfades them all, because like I said, those subtleties in your recording can easily just get missed. So I much prefer to do it manually. Maybe that's because I've been doing this for so long. I've been involved in making music with computers since the dawn of what we now would call DAWs. So like C-Lab Creator, C-Lab Notator, the version of Pro Tools before it was even called Pro Tools. I remember that. I used that. And then there was a version of Logic before it was even called Logic that I used, which was Creator. And I used Steinberg Pro 24, and then I used the very first version of Cubase that like had an audio encoder built into it, which meant you could record audio. So that's how far back I go. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And back then, everything had to be done manually. So I guess, old habits die hard or something like that. So even if there is such a thing as a one-button macro that deletes all the silence from your song, I wouldn't trust it. Because it's going to be algorithm based, and it's just going to delete things that fall below a certain gain or volume level, and that might mean I lose some subtleties, and that might mean that some things just sound a little bit too sterile and a little bit too clean, and sometimes I want to retain stuff that's just kind of there. For it, I'll give you an example. I was recording a big band piece for an album that I did many years ago, and it was an arrangement. It was a piece that I'd written and arranged for this particular big band, and so in the recording, you can hear musicians turning pages on their charts, and you can hear trumpet players picking up mutes, putting them into their trumpets and trombones, playing the muted parts, taking the mute out and putting the mute on the floor. You can hear all of that, and all of that stuff just gets recorded, right? Now, what I could have done was I could have gone and cut all of that stuff out. I didn't want to do that because, yeah, that stuff is there, it's recorded, but to me, it kind of made the recording sound more organic. Does the listener ever actually hear those things happen? No, because there are much louder sounds going on. For example, when the trumpet players are picking up their mutes to play a muted part, the saxophones and trombones are playing, and the rhythm section are playing. So the ear is taking those as more important. So actually the human ear doesn't listen to, it's not that the sound doesn't happen, it's just that the brain just ignores it, and so you never hear the mutes being plucked, stuffed into the instruments and then being put back down on the floor, and you don't hear the pages being turned because your brain doesn't listen to those things. So those things just get tuned out as background sound, so you're never aware of them. And so that's what I like to do. I don't like recordings that are incredibly sterile, where all the dead sound has been completely removed. But that's just me. That's just my personal taste. So I like to do things manually. I find if you're going to use the strip silence, use the normalize function first. Well, the normalize function, that basically just it just basically turns all the audio events up to a certain set level. So if you've normalized to negative 12 dB, everything gets turned up to that. What that does mean is it's easier to hear the stuff that you want to cut, for sure. But I don't think I would ever actually use the normalize feature for those ends. I mean, if you're not necessarily hearing it, but you think it's in the waveform, you can always use the data zoom. Data zoom is probably the best way forward. Let's see if I can show you this. Now, on this screen here, this is the theme tune, by the way. But I can increase the data zoom here. And it's already pretty big, so it doesn't matter. But if I was showing a completely different piece of music, then if you increase this, it doesn't turn anything up or down. All the sound is the same volume. So let me just demonstrate that. Oh, hang on, let's go back to the beginning. So as you heard there, none of the volumes increased when I was turning up the data zoom, because it's just the data. It's just the waveform is made bigger. So you can see more what's going on. So for example, in this piano part here, where there's gaps where the piano's not playing, it looks like there's nothing going on there, but if I zoom in, maybe there is. Now, as it happens, this is a direct line input, so no, you're not going to hear anything. But if I had recorded with a microphone, then yeah, there would be maybe a little bit of ambient noise. You might even hear the foot on the pedal being pressed down and lifted up and that kind of thing. You might have heard those kind of things. You might have even also heard the sound of the key bed. I think all of those sounds are actually intrinsic to the sound of a piano being recorded. I wouldn't want to cut those things out because they're all part of it. They're all, now maybe, you know, if the sound of the pedal being pressed down is obnoxiously loud and maybe it's not in time with anything, so it just sounds like a random thunk sound that is not in time with anything else, then yes, maybe I want to go and cut those things out. But for the most part, if it's not, if it's kind of there but it's quiet, it's kind of subtle, then I'm going to leave it in, to be honest. Where I might use a strip silence function is if I'm recording a lead guitar part and I've got a microphone in front of the amp, and because of the particular choice of pickup settings and you know, other things that are going into the circuit, into the amp, maybe there's a little bit of hum. So hum is kind of okay, but it can be annoying, especially if the hum is at a different pitch to everything else in the song. Like, for example, if your song is in the key of A or the key of A minor, but your hum is a nice E flat, that's going to sound obnoxious. So in this particular instance, I wouldn't necessarily do the strip silence, I would use an expander. And I wouldn't use a gate either. I would use an expander because the expander, rather than just kind of like being either open or closed, which is what a gate does. It's kind of open, closed. It's a little bit harsh. It's a little bit aggressive. I'm not necessarily going to do that on a guitar because there are subtleties that I don't want to miss. So for that, I would use an expander because an expander kind of does a similar thing to a gate. It's just much more fluid. It's a little bit gentler. It's a little bit more subtle. Now you can set the knee really quite harsh on an expander so that it is a little bit more shut off, like a gate, but it's still not as aggressive as a gate and not as obvious as a gate. So an expander might work better, and you basically just dial it in gradually until it's not affecting the sound of the guitar, and you're not starting to lose things like, you know, the sound of the plectrum against the string, things like that. So you play with the attack, you play with the release, you play with the threshold, and you play with the knee settings until you find something that does get rid of the noise but keeps the guitar sound and keeps all of the guitar sound, including the subtleties. So I wouldn't use strip silence in that instance either. So there's maybe a whole bunch of reasons why I would never use strip silence. But on the other hand, you know, if I'm recording a vocal for a song, and in this song there's oh, I forgot, the webcam's not on, so you're not seeing me. So if I'm recording a vocal for a song and maybe there's a guitar solo in the middle of this song, so there's like, I don't know, 20-30 seconds, depending upon how long the guitar solo is, 20-30 seconds of literally nothing going on, and maybe there's headphone bleed being picked up by the mic. I might not want that, so that's something that, yes, I would just cut. I would just select it, cut it, gone. But I wouldn't necessarily use strip silence. Again, there, actually, I'm just selecting that event and deleting it. So, I'm not making a very compelling argument as to when I would use strip silence, because I pretty much don't. Personally, that's just me. But, you know, each to their own. If you want to use strip silence, then yes, go ahead and do it. And probably the best way to do it is to use the strip silence feature in Studio One, and set up the parameters for doing that. So there's audio band here, there's strip silence here, And in this, you can set the threshold for opening and closing. So you can set the decibel, and you can set the detection. You can go, let's get rid of noise floor. Let's have lots of silence. Let's, set manual settings or have just a little bit of silence. And you can set the minimum length, and you can set the pre and post roll and the fade out, the fade in and fade out, and then you just hit apply. So you can select a whole event, or whatever you need to do. You can select a track and do all this on, if you want. So we could, you could select manual. You could go noise floor. You could go lots of silence. But if you've got this linked, by the way, the open threshold to close threshold, you've got this linked. The closed threshold is grayed out because it's not really necessary. Then you can adjust the minimum length of the event, and you can adjust your pre and post roll, and your fade in and fade out could be pre-roll or post-roll or both, and then you just hit apply. Or you can reset it to default if you don't like what you're doing. So this feature is very, very cool, especially with the open and closed thresholds. You can set these individually if you want to. Best way to do that, as I said, is manual. Unlink these, set these to what you want, unless you want to set these to the same value, in which case just set that to linked, and then whatever you set the open threshold to be, the closed threshold is going to be the same. And then you just set the minimum length values and all the other values, and then the apply button will be available. It's grayed out just now, but then you can just hit the apply button and it will just go through that whole event, and it will do all the work for you, including fade outs and fade ins. So Juan, I hope that helps. It was a bit of a long way to get there. I kind of explained why I don't use it, and here's your answers. So sorry about the wee kind of why I wouldn't use this lecture, but yeah, I don't ever use this feature, mostly because I've never really liked the results that it gets me. I end up personally with something that I think is a little bit too sterile. But that's just me. And that's just kind of what I prefer. So let's see. I'm going back through the questions here. Tony says, this is no brainer for anyone looking for a quality interface. Yes, I kind of agree, actually. We got Canadians in force here. We got OMBG Music here. Hello, good to see you. Welcome. I hope you're finding the show useful and valuable. If you've got a Studio One question, we've got 6 minutes left, so get it in. Type at Jonny Lipsham Studios at the start of the question, and then type your question, and I'll be able to pick it out from amongst all the other chat. So I would appreciate that. That helps me quite a bit. And so we've got Ottawa and Edmonton, two great hockey towns represented from Canada tonight. Neil is here as well. Hello to the people. You say, sorry I'm late. No problem. I'm glad you're here. Go check out maybe the replay. We talked a little bit about the new quantum interfaces, because some folks here had some questions on them. So yeah, so we talked about those for the most part. Wow, it is absolutely hammering it down outside. You guys can't really hear it because I have an expander on the mic input. So when I stop talking, you can't hear anything. But I can, and it's loud. Neil says, I'm considering getting a Behringer UMC 1820 interface. Is it compatible with Studio One? And is it possible to get the drivers into my offline machine? Two very good questions. Why you would want to get a Behringer, I'm not sure. I'm not a fan of Behringer. I have to admit that up front. I'm not a fan. I have used their gear, and no, not for me. Especially when we have, PreSonus interfaces galore, like the Studio 1824C, which is pretty much a similar kind of device. Is the Behringer UMC 1820 compatible with Studio One? Yeah, pretty much any audio interface these days. Especially if they've been released in the last 5 years, then yeah, they're compatible with Studio One. They will work either via USB or via Thunderbolt, whichever connection that they have. I don't know anything really about the 1820 specifically. But yes, it will be compatible with Studio One if it's been released in the last 5 years or so. As for getting your drivers into your offline machine, the best way is to have an online machine where you can download them. Because otherwise there's no way to get the drivers. So you are going to have to either put your computer online and get the drivers, download them, and install them, and then put the computer offline, or have another computer that is online, download the drivers, and then put them on a thumb drive or something like that, and then plug the thumb drive into your offline computer, and then take them off with that thumb drive and install them onto the offline computer. Incidentally, that is a similar way in which you can do an offline activation of Studio One, whereby you basically use an online computer to get the product key, and there's a particular process you have to go through to do the offline activation, and then you can basically download the license file that you get from the activation, put that on a thumb drive, put that in your offline computer, and then you just put the license file into the folder for the Studio One license, and then Studio One starts, and it reads that file and it is activated. So similar process. Matt Cochran says, thanks for the show, great as always. Thank you very much. And he says, happy Mother's Day. Yes, I should have said, I forgot actually, because Mother's Day in the United States is not the same as Mother's Day in the UK. So I always get into this little panic where I suddenly go, I've forgotten all about Mother's Day, and then I realize it's the US Mother's Day, so we're okay. And I breathe a sigh of relief, and my blood pressure goes back to normal, and my heart rate goes back to normal, which is always a good thing. So yes, to all mothers out there in the United States and countries that are celebrating and honoring mothers today, a very happy Mother's Day to all of you. I hope you are being spoiled as you should be. And to all husbands of mothers, spoil your wives. I mean, that's a general instruction for like every single day, but most particularly on Mother's Day, I say spoil them for sure. Yes, Chris says, how about some likes, fellas? Yes, please get those likes in. They help me a lot. They really do actually help me a lot. We got 17 people watching. We got 15 likes. In fact, we got 20 people watching and 15 likes. So let's up it a little bit. I would appreciate that. Neil says, I do have an online machine, but the Studio One machine is offline. The interface was first released in 2017, but is still currently available new as per the Behringer website. So long as that device is available as new from Behringer, and for as long as they have current device drivers and the device itself is still supported by Behringer, you're good to go. If you're getting an interface that's maybe not actually supported anymore, you're going to have problems. So I would not recommend going down that route. But yes, so you will have to basically get the device drivers to your online computer and then transfer them onto your offline computer. By the way, I'm also in Canada. Well, there you go. Neil is also in Canada. So Canada is very well represented here. and at least 2 good hockey towns are represented. Tony says, I wanted to use an SSD which has USB-C and connect it to my old MacBook Pro, but it doesn't have USB-C connectivity. Does anyone know if there's any adapters that could make this work? There are cables which are USB-C to USA. You can get them. However, the caveat here is going to be the drop-in speed between USB-C and USB-A. You're gonna get a drop in speed. It won't be as fast as it would like to be in terms of reading, writing, data transfer. But SSDs are ludicrously fast anyway. But you know, USB-C to USB-A, you're gonna lose at least a little bit of data transfer speed for sure. But yes, you can get a cable that is a USB-C to USB-A. I have some USB-C ports on this PC, but I don't have loads. And some of my devices are USB-C and some of my devices are USB-A. And so I have actually had to get extra cables that are C to A in order to be able to make some of my gear work. For example, my Studio 1824C is a USB-C device. However, I don't have enough USB-C ports on the computer to be able to use the USB-C. So it's a USB-C to USB-A. So yes, I am getting a little bit of extra latency. But it's okay. I don't mind, because basically the latency, because my CPU is very, very fast and my RAM is also very, very fast, the latency I get is not really worth bothering about. This thing will handle running Studio One at 128 samples, and it will do that at round about 4 milliseconds of latency. That's not worth bothering about. It really isn't. I know people like to try and aim for 0 latency. It will never happen, because it takes time for real-time data to get processed by a computer through an external interface and through its converters, and then out to speakers and then to your ears. All of that takes time. However, here's the thing. Even if you are standing on a stage and a drummer strikes his snare drum, do you know that it takes at least 8 milliseconds for that sound to reach your ear? So anytime you are hearing anything, the time it takes for that sound to hit your ear and then be processed by your brain, and for your brain to say, aha, that is the sound of a snare drum, and for you to be able to recognize that and determine that you have heard that snare drum hit, that takes at least 8 milliseconds. So there is always latency. Even with the human brain, there is always latency. So people that are constantly trying to get to 0 latency, and people say, oh, even 4 milliseconds of latency, I can feel it. No, you can't, because your brain can't even detect sound that fast. Not even the fastest, smartest person in the world can detect audio that fast. It's just not possible. So don't worry about it if it's, 4 or 5 milliseconds of latency. Anything under 10 milliseconds of latency is not really going to be detected by most people. Some people will be able to detect between 5 and 10 milliseconds of latency. Some people. But most people won't. Most people, it's like 10 milliseconds and above. Then they go, oh, there's latency here. But anything below 10 milliseconds, most people are not going to hear. And just, like maybe 1% or 2% of the world's population are going to be able to hear, up to, between 10 and 5 milliseconds. Nobody is going to hear anything below 4 milliseconds. It will be, your ear will detect that as instantaneous. Even though it's not. Even though technically it is 4 or 5 milliseconds of latency, your brain will not process it fast enough, so your brain will compensate and it will be as if it's instantaneous, which is why when you are visually looking at that drummer striking that snare drum, you see the stick hit the drum and you hear the sound and everything is in sync. It's as if the sound is instantaneous, but it's not. It takes time for the sound to come from the snare drum to your ears and be processed by your brain and determined to be a snare drum hit. That takes, as I said, up to 8 milliseconds. But here's the smart thing about your brain compensates. That's why to you, the sound and the visual is in sync, instantaneous, because that's how clever your brain is. So in the constant futile search for zero latency, the whole thing to me is futile because the brain compensates anyway. The reason why you hear more latency is because the gap between sound and hearing the sound is great enough that the brain can detect that gap. So anyway, Neil says certain Behringer interfaces, the UMC 1820 included, actually have glowing reviews everywhere. My favorite feature, no software controls, all hardware controls, very rare. Yes, it is very rare. And personally, I would not necessarily call that a feature. I prefer to actually have both hardware and software controls. Lloyd is here. He says, my brain has to compensate for a lot more than just latency. That's hilarious. And on that note, we will finish the show there. Billy has an after show Zoom, which I'm probably not going to attend because it's getting stormy out there. In fact, I just saw lightning, so I think I'm going to shut everything down. All right, folks, I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. However, I should say this. There will be no Sunday Night Live next week because I'm not going to be here. I am going down to the borders for a weekend. I'm involved in an event down there that I'm playing at. So I'm going to be there for the whole weekend. So no Sunday Night Live. Sunday Night Live will return the following week. Okay, so Songwriting Simplified on Wednesday this week. No Sunday Night Live. And then we'll be back to Songwriting Simplified the following Wednesday and then back to normal. Okay, so bear that in mind, folks. So don't turn up here expecting there to be a Sunday Night Live next Sunday because there will not be. I will not be here. But thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for the 18 likes. We've got 22 people here. So could we get a few more likes? I'd appreciate that. And we will wrap the show at this juncture. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. If you've got songwriting questions, composing, arranging, music theory questions, then you can either email me, you can go to the web address down here, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and hit the contact form, hit the contact us button, and you can email your question to me there if it's like a bit more in depth, and we'll start the show with those questions, or you can just get them in the chat like normal. Okay, whichever you prefer. I will see you on Wednesday. Good night.